We ready? Okay. I think I'm no longer on mute. So hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm Jessica. I am the graduate student assistant for Big Ideas, which means that my job is just to help Alexis and Philip run the contest this year. This semester, my role has been mainly to work with students. So we've hosted some workshops and some panels to sort of help them draft really high-quality proposals. So my hope is that when you get access to them, you'll be really impressed with how high quality they are. But today we're just going to sort of go through a general background of Big Ideas, what we ask students to submit in the proposals, and then the nitty-gritty of how you guys will actually access the proposals and start to evaluate them. So as Alexis mentioned, we have some people joining via the World Wide Web. We have some handouts today, so if you're joining us via the live stream, please email bigideascontest@gmail.com, and Philip will email you the documents that we have today. And also at the end, if you have questions, email that address and Philip can share them with the group. Okay. So how many of you are familiar with Big Ideas and sort of what we've done? So, Philip is. A number of you. Okay, so for those who aren't, Big Ideas is a small grant competition. It was launched in 2005. It was originally called Bears Breaking Boundaries. If any of you have heard of that. But basically, Big Ideas is all about supporting student innovation. So Big Ideas believes that students come to campus with ideas, with creativity, with skills, and we try to leverage those by giving them small financial support and mentorship to implement their big ideas. This year, there were 7 competition categories, and past year there were many, many more. And you should all know what competition you'll be judging for, but to give you a sense of sort of the other categories this year, we had global poverty alleviation, energy efficiency, emerging and neglected diseases, information technology for society, improving student life, creative expression for social justice, and scaling up. Scaling up is for students who have won Big Ideas grants in the past and are seeking money as they're scaling up their project or adding on a new arm of their project, something like that. And you'll notice that some of them have asterisks next to them. So all of the contests are open to student teams with at least one Berkeley student on them. The one with the asterisks were also open to students from other eligible UC campuses. So if you happen to be judging that one, you may notice that there may not be a Berkeley student on one of those teams, and I just didn't want that to alarm any of you. Okay, and like I said, Big Ideas has supported students in the past, and they've done some pretty amazing things. Students have engineered water purification systems. They've designed cell phone applications that can help diagnose malaria in remote villages, created meaningful service activities for students on campus, and also developed plans to improve lower Sproul. So they really range from campus problems, community problems, to global problems. And Big Ideas, these judges, is really integral to making the contest happen. So as you guys can probably guess, you'll be responsible for submitting evaluations that will help us sort of narrow down the field. This semester, students are submitting a pre-proposal, and then students will be selected as finalists based on your input, and then the finalists will submit a full proposal. So you're helping to narrow down the field. But another really big part of your role is you'll be submitting written feedback to all student teams. So that means student teams who are selected as finalists will use your feedback to help them draft their full proposal. So they'll start with your feedback to understand how they can strengthen their proposal or their idea. But even student teams who don't go on with the competition this year will receive feedback from you. And we see that as really important to helping them develop professionally and academically. Okay, and a quick overview of sort of the process for this year. Like I said, this semester we've been working with students and helping them submit their pre-proposals, and they were due on November 21st, so we have them all. And then now we're in the pre-proposal judging stage. And sort of the 2 big steps. You should have all received an email. Does that sound familiar? To UNoodle, which is the website that we'll be using where you can access your proposals that you've been assigned and submit your feedback. So you'll all receive an email and create an account to use UNoodle, and we'll talk about sort of the specifics of using UNoodle in a second. And then you'll read your proposals, submit your evaluation, and evaluations are due for all of your proposals on January 6th. So that's a big date for you guys. And then we'll move into the mentorship stage. So this year, Big Ideas has split the competition into two. Last year, there was just one proposal round students submitted in the spring. This year, we've had the pre-proposal round, which you're judging, and we'll have the full proposal round. And in between, there'll be this mentorship stage. So students who are selected as finalists will be paired with industry professionals of all different kinds, sometimes students, graduate students here, and they will work with them to develop really high-quality professional full proposals. So after you submit your evaluations, the finalists will be notified in January, and then they'll start that mentorship piece. And then from there, they'll submit their full proposals, and finalists will be notified late spring, possibly even this summer. And as I said, we received all the pre-proposals. We've identified, or we received 123 in all, and then you guys will help us select 2 to 6 finalists in each category to move on as finalists. And after we receive their full proposals and we've gone through that stage of judging, 1 to 3 winners will be identified in each category. Does that make sense? Okay, and then I also wanted to give you a sense of sort of what you'll be seeing in the proposals. This year we provided students with some guidelines to follow. So they should all have some key elements that you'll see across proposals, and they're very straightforward. None of this should be super surprising. They'll all have a title. They'll all have a project description. They should, after reading the proposal, you should have a very clear sense of what they intend to do. All of the major next steps. The one thing to know is that we asked them to focus on the first year of funding. So awards are being dispersed around June 2012, and then they'll likely use the funding until June 2013. So their project description should really focus on now-ish to June 2013. And they may mention things after that, but you really should have a clear idea of what's happening in their first year of implementation. They included a needs statement. That should give you a sense of why their project is important. We asked them to include things like research statistics on the problem, information about the community that they're serving or the market they're entering, and also, ideally, what's been done in the past and how they're doing it better. We asked them to include a timeline. You'll probably see a pretty big range in how specific students are in their timeline, but we asked them to include like sort of major next steps. So it should just give you a sense that they understand all the things that they have to do to complete their project. They included team bios, so that should hopefully convince you that their team has the capacity to do what they say they're going to do. So it'll note relevant accomplishments, training, areas of expertise, things like that. And then we also asked them to submit a budget this year. We included a budget template for them to use, and hopefully everybody used it. Some groups may not have, but this is sort of generally what you'll be seeing. It's pretty straightforward. The top section is basically expenses, and we provided them with like some subcategories which they could either use or not use, but you should see things like supplies costs, travel costs, things like that if they're relevant. And then the bottom section is projected revenue. So if they are planning on applying to other grant competitions, if they plan on receiving in-kind contributions, anything like that, it should be listed in their revenue. And at the very bottom, there's a projected funding gap. So Big Ideas grants are on average about $5,000. So the budget should give you a sense of whether or not their project is feasible. So if they have a budget that's $40,000 and they're not planning on applying to any other grants, that might give you a sense of whether or not their project is incredibly viable. Does that make sense? And at this point, it's a preliminary budget, so it's sort of like their best guess at what their costs will be. And if they've mentioned something in their project description that will incur a cost, it should be listed on their budget. So those are the sort of things you'll be looking for. Oh, and a note on page limits and other things that you might see. The page limit for the pre-proposal was 4 pages, not including the budget. So there should be 4 pages of text and then a budget. There may be references. On a 5th page, we said that was fine. Some students may also have submitted appendices. So we have told students that they could submit appendices if they felt that it was vital, but judges are only required to read 4 pages and a budget. So you can look at them if you feel so inclined, but you are in no way required to skim through potentially a bulk, Alexis has a comment, of appendices.
Hi, this is Alexis. I just wanted to add the only category where appendices were kind of encouraged was scaling up, and that was just so that if you're reviewing those proposals, you had a sense of what they had originally proposed and how what they were asking to do this round was specifically scaling up from their original proposal. So otherwise, we certainly didn't encourage appendices.
We didn't. But that doesn't mean that students didn't submit them. So I just wanted to warn you in case you see a bulk of appendices. Okay, so when you're looking at your proposals, what are you looking for? Yeah. Oh, hold on. Wait for the microphone. Someone has a question.
Is this information in our handouts, or do we need to be writing this down, or are you providing this in a format, some other type of format later on?
Everything you need to know should be in your handouts.
Okay.
So don't worry too much. Yes. Oh.
You mentioned the student bios earlier, and I'm not seeing it as part of the criteria. So how much attention should we give to that? Because after all, these are students who are just starting out and might not have a lot of experience.
Right. So we'll sort of get into that later when you see the rubric in detail. But the bios sort of feed into like this viability category. Like if some students may or may not be more experienced than others, but if you get the sense that they have relevant knowledge in the area, that's sort of what you're looking for. Does it seem like they can do what they say they plan to do? So for example, if my training is in education and I tell you I want to design a mobile app, something to do with education, well, that's great. I have the education expertise, but if there's no one on my team who has any sort of tech experience, you might doubt that I can actually carry through with what I say I want to do. It's a broad, non-specific sort of gut feeling. But this is generally what you're going to be looking at. In the pre-proposal round, we put a really high weight on creativity and innovation. Partly because it's the big ideas competition, and partly because we didn't want to eliminate students who may not have a lot of experience writing proposals in the beginning stages. So the emphasis in the pre-proposal is, do you have a creative, viable idea? And then if they do, hopefully they'll move on to the full proposal round, and they'll work with mentors to really work on the finesse of their and polish of their full proposal. So that's why creativity and innovation is weighted so high. After that is strength of the business case or proposal, which is sort of about bios and about do they make a convincing case for why their project is needed. And then there are a few smaller other criteria. Overall quality, that's the polish piece. One second. Strength of budget is 10%, and then there's category-specific criteria. So for every category, there are a couple of other elements that we wanted to touch on that are specific to that category, and you'll see those in the rubric, and those are also weighted as 10%. Another quick question.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up question, kind of from yours, actually. So, for example, with the coding issue, you can have a really great idea and not be able to code such and such language that you should be using. Are they going to be allowed to change teammates? Like,
yeah,
can they
teammates are flexible.
Are flexible. Okay,
Yeah,
because you can just say, like, you need to recruit someone.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we encourage students to say that and to note where there are gaps. So not to brush over those, but to say, we know that we need to recruit this type of person. We plan on doing it in X number of months. And that should be in their timeline. They should state it. If they haven't stated it, that might be a red flag. Okay, and so this is sort of the beef of the presentation. There's also a handout where all of this is laid out, but we wanted to sort of walk you through using UNoodle, which is the website you'll be using to submit your evaluations, and make sure you had a clear sense of what it looks like, how to use it, that sort of thing. Okay, so like I said earlier, you should have received an email from UNoodle. Did everyone receive that email? It looks like this. It just says, you've been in... Oh, that's a good... Yeah, if you haven't received it, it's likely due to CalMail issues, because I think they all went out, right? So you should be receiving it shortly if you haven't already. But the important thing to know is that it has a link. It says, to accept your invitation, click the link below. And so we'll ask you to click that link, and then you'll be sent to a sign-in page on UNoodle. And if you've already created an account, you can log in on the right part of the screen. If you haven't created an account, you can create one at this time. The important thing is to use the email address that we sent the invitation to. And then once you do that, you'll be directed to a Judge Your Entries page. And on this page, you'll be able to access a few things. So we posted the entrant guidelines, which are the contest guidelines that we gave to students. So you'll see all the information that students were given when they were asked to submit a proposal. And then you'll receive Big Ideas Judging Guidelines, which is also the first page of this handout. And it should have everything I'm saying now. It's pretty general information about your role, the sort of things we'll be asking you to do, that sort of thing. So you can access both of those documents, and then you'll see all of the proposals that you were assigned over here. And you should be assigned between 6 and 8 proposals. And to access them, you'll click the Judge Now link to the right of each proposal name. And when you do that, you'll be taken to a very long, well, not, it looks long, it's not actually that long, rubric. On the rubric page, you'll see 2 pieces of information that you'll need to access in order to evaluate. The first one is entry form data. So when students submitted their proposal, there was a web form where they filled in, like, here's my name, here's my major, here's an elevator pitch of my project, here's a slightly longer summary. So there's some relevant information. Ideally, all of that should be in the body of their proposal, but it could have been the case where they, for some reason, didn't put it in their proposal. So check out the entry form data to make sure that you're seeing all of their information. And then under files, there is their pre-proposal document. So that should be the 4 pages, budget, hopefully no appendices. So you'll open those and you'll read through them, and then you'll start going through the rubric. So the rubric contains like 6-ish Likert scales and then a few qualitative feedback, which is where you'll submit your written feedback to teams. And then, so here's a reminder of the different sort of components that we're looking at and their relative weights. So again, creativity and innovation, 40%, strength of business case, 30%, so on and so forth. And you'll just drag that little knob over. And there's no text to go along with these numbers, so it's important to note that 1 is poor and 5 is excellent. It's intuitive, but it doesn't say that anywhere, so that's an important thing to note. So if I think a team did an excellent job, I'd move it to 5. If I think they did an okay job, I'd move it to 3, etc. And again, the Likert questions go through all the things that we went through before. And then there are the qualitative feedback sections. And these mirror the Likert scale questions. So it should be, after you've decided on what score they should get in the Likert scale questions, it should be pretty easy to submit your feedback. So this is the part that takes a little bit of time. We'll ask you to go through the proposal and ideally provide as specific comments as you can. Again, students will be using these to either start working on their full proposal or potentially rework their proposal for other years or other competitions. So the more detailed feedback you can provide, the better for students. And I think there are 4 of those total. And then once you've submitted all of that information, you'll just click the Save Scores, and you're done for that proposal. And you'll do it for each of the proposals that you've been assigned. There's also Likert scale knob things on the feedback questions. Quirk of Unidal is that we had to put them for every question, but you can totally ignore the Likert scale ones on the feedback questions. You'll need to answer the Likert ones for the first 6 questions, but for the written feedback ones, you can totally ignore them. We won't weight them at all. So that's a confusing detail. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, save scores to submit. What were the other details? Oh, we have questions. We'll go there first.
When you save the scores, can you go back and change them? Like, if I have, okay.
Yeah, you can.
Right, so we will close the judging after the 6th, so you won't be able to change them after that, but if you, after going through everything, decide you want to make some adjustments, that's perfectly fine with us. Okay.
My question is related, which is, I'd like to read through all of them briefly before I go back in and score them individually so I can get a sense of sort of what the pool is. to sort of know how to judge them against each other, because I'm not just, I mean, you know, I would think we're not just judging them unto themselves, but also being aware of
Right.
who's in the same pool. So can I do that?
Definitely. Yeah, you can access all of the PDFs, save them to your computer, look over them at your leisure, for sure. Oh, you can't. They can't open the PDF and then save them?
So just to clarify, you can look at all of the ones that are assigned to you and look at those and compare those against one another.
Exactly.
But not every judge was assigned to every single proposal. So you have to use whatever you were assigned as your given pool. And the reason for that is that there were categories like IT for Society and Improving Student Life where there were roughly 25, 26 submissions. And in the interest of getting really good substantive feedback, we recognize that any more than 8 proposals to look at is probably not going to yield the type of feedback that we're hoping for. And we're using multiple judges to look at every single proposal so that we can kind of norm it a little bit. So there's a method to the madness. Were there other questions over here?
How many judges are looking at each proposal, and can you give us the proposals that won last year so that we could, I mean, I think this goes to your point. Like, I hopefully I know a big idea when I see one, but I don't know.
Well, to answer the first part of your question, at least 2 and as many as 3 judges will be looking at any one proposal. Another thing that might be helpful, the second part of this handout is an example proposal from last year. It has comments, and it has the judging rubric with example comments and scores. So that might be a first place to look to understand. So this was a winner from last year, to understand what a winner might look like. I don't know, Alexis, I don't know if you want to talk to potentially looking at other.
Sure. I mean, one thing I would also recommend, if you go to bigideas.berkeley.edu, on the front page we have summaries of all the winners from previous years. So certainly they have kind of the project summary that the students submitted on that page. So that gives you a sense, one, of sort of what the types of ideas were, but also the substance of those proposals. The other issue is, because this is the first year that we've had the pre-proposal, previous years are going to be noticeably different in terms of being like a full 15-page proposal versus a 4-page proposal. So It's a work in progress. Yeah. It's certainly something we're hoping what we provided to you is helpful. And if you have questions, you can certainly come to us. We're happy to help you with the process as much as we can.
That was a full proposal. You'll notice that it's different in a number of ways. Like last year, we didn't give students a whole lot of guidelines, so there isn't a timeline and there isn't a budget at all in there. And if that was submitted this year, that would likely be a problem. Last year it won. I picked it because it's roughly the right length and has the amount of detail that you might expect from a pre-proposal, but yes, it was a full proposal last year. And then another note on the whole process. This is also the first time that we're providing a training to judges and using UNoodle, so you'll have the opportunity as judges to provide us with feedback about how easy the process is, where there were hiccups, that sort of thing. So as Alexis was saying, it's an iterative process, and you as judges are part of that.
So we thank you.
Yeah.
And then the other piece related to, I think somebody made a comment earlier about CalMail. For those of you that aren't at Berkeley, you probably don't know that our email system has been going down just about every single day for the past week. So a few of the category-specific criteria have not been loaded into UNoodle yet because we've been unsuccessfully trying to communicate back and forth through email. So we're hoping to get those up in the next day or two so that all of the judging will be open by this weekend. So if you want to begin the process, you can go ahead and do that.
And then, as Alexis was saying, if you have questions, I think you guys probably have either Alexis or Philip's email address, but you can also email the Big Ideas contest
at Gmail, so that we'll actually get it.
And we'll answer questions as they arise. Did we get any email questions? Okay. That's true. But if they're Berkeley people, they won't be able to email it. Okay. Are there any other questions? Lingering thoughts? Yeah.
Oh,
How long are you expecting each one to take approximately?
We're expecting the whole process to take about 6 hours, including this training, so 5.5 more, roughly. That's our prediction, given how long it takes to sort of go through and provide the feedback.
right. And in terms of the responses and the feedback, it says this on your guidelines, but it's about, we're looking for hopefully 250 to 500 words. So again, there is a substantive feedback piece related to that. And I'm not sure all of you know the process we went through to kind of get to all of this. We did have, as you know, and Jessica mentioned, Big Ideas and Bears Breaking Boundaries has been around for a while. And we were able to get a group of Haas students from Social Sector Solutions, which is a course that was seeded through Big Ideas money, hooray, to do kind of a consulting project on this. And one of the pieces that students really asked for was more support in developing proposals. So that's why we've hired Jessica, and she's been actively offering office hours and doing different workshops and things like that, but also the feedback piece. So that's why we're trying as best we can to provide some really concrete criteria that you can use, but also to give you support so as judges you can feel like you can provide that. So we do thank you, and we know that students will very much appreciate the time and effort that you put into their proposals.
Any other questions? Hold on to the microphone just so the internet viewers.
It's similar to the questions earlier about saving. So I'm able to go basically back in and work on the proposal as often as I want, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And even if I'm saying save and submit, it's really just holding it.
Right.
And you guys aren't going to look at it, or it's just not going to be evaluated till the deadline.
Right. We won't
Okay,
look at
I
it
just wanted to
until
confirm that.
January 6th. Philip has a comment, though.
Yeah, until we close the judging round, until we actually go in and physically close the judging round in the Unodal system, everybody can monitor their own comments and make changes. The other thing I wanted to say is that we did run the stats for this year, and the applicants, there were 70% undergraduates who applied and only 30% graduate, which is a difference from last year. But it also reemphasizes a point of quality feedback, because a lot of these students will be participating for the first time review, things like that.
Question up front.
And while you said, we're assigned 6 or 8, you said in some categories there might be 25. Even though I don't have access to read those, will you give us kind of the end number? Like, if these are the 6 or 8 and you know that 1 or 3 of them are going to win versus, I don't really think any of these are putting forth a big idea, and there's another 19 I'm not looking at.
Right. Yeah, I think we can totally give you the number in each category. We definitely have those statistics, so that shouldn't be a problem. Anything else?
Okay, well, thank you all for your time. And like Jessica said, please feel free to use bigideascontest@gmail.com if you want to write to us and ask additional questions. And we do have phones, and we're happy to answer them, so feel free to use those too. We're going old school these days over here at Berkeley.
Thank you very, very much.